Let me ask you this. So we know that Greg got relieved of his duties on the task force. What stopped you guys, or what prevented you guys from being able to pursue Keefe over the PCP case?
Quite honestly, it was Greg's reputation. Greg had a case that he was in charge with, the George Torres case. Are you familiar with that? And a judge rules or writes a 147-page ruling basically blasting Greg for his credibility with lying to and promising witnesses stuff to coerce them to testify. I don't believe the U.S. attorney would touch the dope case against Keefe D. And I believe they also shopped it to the major narco bureau at the district attorney's office, and they too wanted nothing to do with. And that goes with Keefe and all the other guys that were involved with the dope dealings with Keefe. So there was probably a dozen or so, maybe more, that basically got a free pass.
Yeah, just again, because terms matter, the way that we speak matters because there's nuances to. I was never relieved of duty. When someone's relieved of duty, they're sent home, their badge is taken from them, their guns taken from them, and they're just kind of put on ice for a while. That's what when we use that term, relieved of duty. It's when you are, basically in so much trouble that you're on a serious timeout while they investigate the claims that are being alleged. For me, I just got transferred. I got transferred from Christopher Wallace Investigation, the Christopher Wallace Task Force, over to what came to be known as the Grim Sleeper. It was another very high-profile case in Los Angeles. It was a cold case at the time. Obviously, that was solved, and somebody has been, charged and convicted in that. So I just went from Christopher's case over to the Lonnie Franklin case because that wasn't facing a big federal lawsuit like the Wallace case was. And so while these claims came up in the Torres trial regarding me, the LAPD did what was prudent and said, hey, we've got to figure this out. And this is already, mired in a whole bunch of, legal issues. Let's just put you over here and work on this other cold case until we figure this out. And then, of course, ultimately, they do their internal affairs investigation. I'll send you the adjudication of that case, and you'll see that it came to absolutely nothing. If those claims that Caouette is making were true, then this would have ended very differently for me. If he's making these allegations that I lied in court, which is absolutely not what happened, and you'll see that when you see the paperwork, or that I coerced witnesses. All you have to do is look at that case and see that every single one of those witnesses testified that I had no influence over them. Their deals were with the U.S. government. So these were just theatrical things that defense attorneys were throwing out because they were doing everything that they could to protect their client. And this is just the nature of these high-profile cases. We say in law enforcement all the time, big cases, big fucking problems. Little cases, little problems. No cases, no problems. And so if you're going to work on these cases, then this is sometimes these are just some of the type of issues that you have to expect. But no, I think it's very disappointing to have somebody in his position to be saying those things because they're not only wrong, it's like a character assassination with no validity. And it's just, it's disappointing.
If they wanted to, could they have pursued the dope case against Keefe D?
100%. See, again, this is and this is, again, these guys know this. These guys aren't idiots. They've been in cops for a long time. All of the evidence in that case stands on its own. All of the surveillance is all recorded with multiple guys that can testify to that. We're wearing, our informants are wearing transmitters that are being recorded. Everything's, documented in a way where all you have to do is present the physical evidence and it speaks for itself. There's other investigators that are in a position to testify to all of this. You can remove me from that and have absolutely no problem with a rock solid prosecution. And so the decision was not to prosecute. And that was primarily because the U.S. Attorney, Tim Seawright, who was overseeing the drug case with Keefe, had also been the attorney on the George Torres case. And after he got his ass handed to him in the Torres case, they removed him as the head of narcotics division at the U.S. Attorney's Office. So when he was removed from that position overseeing their narcotic cases, the case kind of died with him. And then I think you said there was a claim about a certain number of people that got away or something like that.
Yeah, he actually said that there were dozens of guys that ended up getting a free pass. Is that accurate or no?
No, not at all. That's, again, another extreme exaggeration of the truth. There were 3 guys, essentially, that Keefe was associating with on the cocaine case, the kilos that we were picking up. A guy named Trevor Reed, a guy named Daryl Mason. There's one other guy, I can't remember his name. So the 3 guys plus Keefe. On the PCP case, when we bought the PCP case, we got that and then immediately had a lab team roll back and do a search warrant and take down the PCP lab. So then people were, prosecuted in that. So I don't know where his numbers are coming from. There was certainly not dozens or even a dozen. It was really 3 or 4 guys that got a pass. And then, it is what it is. It's dope. They'll be out there dealing dope again the next day, and hopefully somebody picks them up down the road. But that was not our objective. These guys were just kind of peripheral people of interest. We were trying to get to solving Biggie's murder. And if letting people walk on dope cases so that we could accomplish that goal, again, that was our priority.
I interviewed Bobby Ladd, and it really irked him the way Greg went about the proffer agreement with Keefe. In particular, what bothered him about that was that he didn't reach out to Vegas to let him know that he was going to offer him this kind of queen for a day deal or anything like that. He kind of just went ahead and did it. Do you feel the same way that Mr. Ladd feels, or do you see it a different way?
100%. I'm 100% behind Bobby. As an investigator, you don't step on another investigation which you really don't know that much about. In my mind, he should have stuck with the dope dealings and the stuff with Biggie, stepped out of the room and called Vegas and said, hey, this is what we've got. Can you guys get over here? I've been in interviews where, one in particular, there was one gentleman talking about 4 murders. One of them were mine, and 2 of the other murders were other investigators. I wouldn't let him talk about it for 2 reasons. One, that's not my investigation. And number 2, I know nothing about that particular crime in either of the additional murders. So when I was done talking about my murder, I asked him if he would mind if I called the other investigators, and thank goodness he did, and he was very candid and told the other teams about those particular homicides. So Kading was 100% in the wrong by not getting Vegas involved with this. He never should have gotten into the Tupac murder. It's not his jurisdiction.
Yes, let's unpack that because there's a lot going on there. There's quite a few questions that are kind of embedded there. I never had the authority to offer a proffer, nor did I offer a proffer. That was offered by the U.S. Attorney's Office. It was an agreement made between the U.S. Attorney and Keefe and his attorney. I don't have that authority that the U.S. Attorney's Office does. Not talking to Vegas, that decision came from way above my head. I think I've already mentioned regarding what Ladd said is that we wanted to use Keefe to further some of the aspects of what he was claiming took place in Tupac's murder. And I suggested to the lieutenant, hey, we want to turn this guy into a CI for a temporary short period of time and pursue this thing. Lieutenant says, hey, I agree with it. Let's see what the captain says. Captain says, sounds good to me. Let's see what the commander says. Commander says, oh, let me kick that upstairs to the deputy chief. And our deputy chief, Jerry Chaliff, agreed also. And he had the authority to make that decision, to not contact Vegas. And so he said, I bless that decision. And if there's any fallout from it with Vegas, I'll handle it at my level. There's a deputy chief with the LAPD. He can figure out how to smooth the roads if necessary. But I feel it was the right decision at the time. We needed to keep Keefe's confidentiality as secret as we possibly could. And the more people you talk to about it, the more likelihood information is going to get out. And if anybody found out that Keefe was not only cooperating with law enforcement but was working as an informant, then the whole thing's going to go to fall to pieces. So that's just the way that it was. And I don't also understand what he's talking about. Like, you don't talk about other people's cases. Well, sometimes you would call another agency, depending on what those specific situations are. But I can tell you, and I have a whole stack, I just went through the Tupac books that I have. And there is probably at least 30 different interviews of people specifically related to Tupac's case that are not being done by Las Vegas. It's being done by feds in New York, feds in Los Angeles, sheriff's personnel, LAPD personnel. All kinds of interviews are taking place unbeknownst to Las Vegas. Obviously, after the interviews, you contact them and let them know you've got somebody, and then they can come out and interview him if they choose to. But you've got dozens of detectives doing this. So it's not unprecedented. It's not some rule that we all have to live by. In fact, this is a proffer session right here. This is dated in June 14th. I'm sorry. This is dated July 16th of 1998. This is a proffer session with Keefe D at the United States Attorney's Office without Vegas's involvement. So even back as far as 1998, the U.S. Attorney's Office is offering a proffer agreement to Keefe D. And so I guess my point is that it's relatively common. If I can find 30 reports just in this case of individual interviews of witnesses and suspects, and which are being carried out by agents or officers from outside of Las Vegas, then you can do the math. This has taken place all of the time. And then this claim that we don't know anything about it, that just is so asinine. It's 2009. This happened in 1996. Books have been written about it. We've got tons and tons of interviews that we can read about it. We've got documentaries. Everybody in the world knows the Tupac case. So this idea is you shouldn't talk about it because you don't know about it. At that time, I probably knew as much about it as anybody in the world, next to the Las Vegas guys. So to make this ridiculous assumption that don't talk about it because you don't know about it, what the fuck are you talking about, Mike? We've got, 13 years of history to refer to talk about. So that's just a very naive statement, in my opinion. And again, I don't agree with his whole approach of shut down an interview. I would never do that. If I'm talking to somebody and they want to talk about a murder, I'm just going to be like, and then what happened? I am not going to give him an opportunity to change his mind. I'm not going to go out of the room and then let this guy sleep on it. If he wants to talk about a murder, I'm going to let him talk about a murder, because you may not get a second chance. When you make that phone call and those guys have to drive across the desert and come out the next day, he's maybe changed his mind. He's gone back to his cell, talked to somebody and said, what the hell are you doing? Shut up. Or he talked to an attorney and told him you don't talk anymore. So you don't lose that opportunity. And so if that's the way Mike approaches it, so be it. I don't agree with it. If somebody wants to talk, you can let them talk. And you really don't need to know that much about a murder. You can just go like this. And then what happened? And then what happened? And they're telling you. You're not telling them. So it's a little bit naive in my opinion.
Okay. Going back to that proffer agreement that Keefe did in 1998, did he say a lot of different things then than he did in the proffer session with you?
Yeah, he denies involvement in this original proffer session. So I'm going to send you a couple of things. I'm going to send you the face sheet of our interview with him, our proffer session interview. And you'll see in that down at the bottom, we were talking about in his prior statements that he wasn't honest. Well, we're referring to these statements. And that's what we're giving him an opportunity to correct in our proffer session. And so I'll send you that, and you can post that. And this other thing, I think Caouette goes on to say that he was even in this interview.